Okay, welcome to Black Belt Interviews. This is Master David Hodson, and I'm joined this morning with Master Shane Fitzgibbon from Galway, Ireland, the Chief Instructor of Connacht Taekwon-Do. Welcome, sir.
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Really pleased to have this opportunity to speak to you, as we do know each other, but we haven't met in person other than over the screens. And here we are once again, but very happy to see you and find out all about your Taekwondo career so far. Nice part of the world where you are right now, Galway, Ireland.
It's wet today, but it's been beautiful for the last couple of weeks. But I think the farmers will be very happy to see the rain today.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've got the opposite today for one day, I think, the sunshine. But you in the countryside, are you?
Yes, I live about 20 miles outside of Galway City, and I have a fine big garden here, which is great for my furry babies, my two dogs. So yeah, it's nice to be out here.
Lovely. And yeah, so I wondered if we could just begin really where you began, whenever that was, that's years ago.
Great.
It all began, yeah.
So as a child, Bruce Lee was all the rage, you know, and seeing the movies, if you were lucky enough to get hold of them on VCR tape. I wonder how many of the listeners remember VCR. But what happened is that, you know, everybody was talking about martial arts, but I hadn't been exposed to it personally. And then when I was around 13, a friend of mine who was at my house and we were just hanging out, and he just announced he had to leave because he had to go to his Taekwondo class. And I'd never heard of Taekwondo before, but it sounded like martial art. So I just asked him about it, and he told me that that's what it was. And I asked him, could I come down with him to watch it? And he said, of course. So I watched the class and I was just sold straight away, fascinated, loved it. Yeah. Signed up the following week. And now 34 years later, wow. There's no looking back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So he was a student already, obviously. Any particular belt was he? Do you know?
He was yellow belt, actually, as I remember. And unfortunately, our friendship was cut short a little bit because a couple of years after that, their family immigrated. They're in Australia now.
Yeah.
And he didn't continue his training after that, but obviously I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think many people have similar stories. I started with a bunch of guys at the same time. They kind of left about yellow belt and left me there on my own. So similar like you, really. But what was it about the class at the time? Do you remember what it was? Was it a particular night for something, or?
It was the teen adult class. I don't remember exactly what was covered. It is a long time ago, but the classes generally had a mix of patterns and sparring, and it was just everything.
Yeah.
Just wow, like this is fantastic. This is everything I've dreamed about doing. You know, it's so cool. So yeah, I couldn't wait to get in. And I took this. I've always been kind of an all-rounder in the sense that I was reasonably good at sparring and patterns. Some people have a preference. I always loved both.
Yeah.
But I suppose there was a bit more of an emphasis on the sparring side to it, which I did really take to, and I loved it.
Yeah. Fantastic. And so this was close to where you lived. Were you an active lad at that time, 13 anyway? You was quite sporty.
Was I sporty? Yes. Excuse me now, I apologize. I actually just have to clear my throat for some reason. Excuse me. I was reasonably sporty, but I never really got into ball sports.
Yeah.
I could play them. I kicked the ball, played soccer with my friends. I played GAA football at school. I did a bit of rounders and stuff like that. And I was okay at all of them, but I definitely found my niche with Taekwondo. Yeah, I just took to it. I think if people try enough things, they find what they're meant to do in physical activity. Yeah. And team sport, at least not a team ball sport, wasn't for me. Whereas the Taekwondo, it was just love at first sight.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And it has not dwindled at all.
Yeah, we can see that, sir, and all what you're involved in today. Yeah. The amount of work you put in and everything. And so how many times a week would you have been training back then? You know, was there an opportunity to do it more than once a week, twice a week?
Classes were only on Saturdays.
Right.
But I practiced every day.
Yeah.
And I got into a routine very quickly of practice. I had started secondary school So we were blessed that we had a fantastic gym in that school. So on lunch break, I used to go into the school gym and I would do some practice there. We got access to some weights equipment. The PE teacher was brilliant that he'd educate us how to use it safely.
Yeah.
So I was doing strength training from an early age. I was doing tons of stretching, practicing the patterns. Then I'd go home, get my homework and studies done, and then I'd do a bit more stretching in the evenings, and then class on Saturday. And I just that was my life, and it became a social thing as well, because I made some good friends through the Taekwondo, and we would do what young fellas would do. We would meet up and maybe just walk around the town in the afternoon. But that was after 5 hours of Taekwondo. Not all training. I used to go down early and help out at the school. And then I do my own class. And then we'd head up and do what young fellas do, in terms of, just being social. But it was a fantastic, environment, and it gave me a great social outlet.
Yeah. So there was that theme of Taekwondo wherever you went, regardless, it gave you the friendship as well, as it does for so many people, doesn't it? And it sounds very similar to my experience. I was a bit older, but likewise, the training took over. You made a new group of friends, and that kind of lasted till now, and goes on. So, were you a competitive lad back then? Were you interested in was there an opportunity to compete?
I was very competitive. There was some opportunity to compete, not a lot. Credit to my instructor at the time, Grandmaster Dalton now. He organized some kind of local club tournaments, and there was an annual tournament in Cork. I think it was the Cork Open, actually called. So there was those few things. There wasn't a lot else. It was really when I got my black belt that the opportunities for competing opened up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I was very competitive in class. We might not do it as easily now, but back then I was a strong teenager. So I was sparring adults in class every Saturday, and I thought nothing of it. Now as an instructor, would I put a 14 or 15-year-old against a fully grown man? Probably not. But I didn't think anything of it when I was the 14 and 15-year-olds, and it made me tough. It definitely made me tough, and I was able for it, more to the point. But it also toughened me up because I had to get physically strong. So by the time I got my black belt, I was reasonably seasoned in that. I was well up for a scrap.
Yeah. And training was split evenly between the different elements, would you say? Tackling, sparring.
It was. We didn't do much of the step sparring back then. We focused on one-step sparring, but not 3 or 2-step.
Sure.
I got exposed to them actually quite a bit later. When I look back, I can see the benefits of both of them. I definitely think 3-step is underutilized. Yeah. Even working with my own students, it is amazing how often they're learning the movements from the patterns, and they don't really understand how to apply them until they have somebody in front. Let's even just take the blocks. They don't understand how to make them work until they have got someone in their face who's really going at them with a punch.
Yeah.
And I think that is something I would like to have been exposed to a little bit sooner. But it is what it is. I have no complaints. I received wonderful training, and I am where I am today because of that.
Yeah.
No question.
So getting your black belt was a big step. Competitions opened up. Did the opportunity to teach around that time come up, or was you?
Yes, I got teaching very quick, because when I came, so I'm originally from Tralee. And so that's where I started training. And I came to Galway to university in the autumn of '92, and I got my black belt that December. And there was no Taekwondo in Galway. So in March, a fresh-faced 18-year-old, I opened up the Taekwondo School. That's the first time. Oh my God, when I look back, how bad I was back then at teaching. But of course, I was as good as I could be, with the experience I had. But I'd been doing warm-ups from the time I was a yellow tag. So I was helping out Mr. Dalton at the time, all the way through my color belts. So I was very comfortable in front of a class, and that was encouraged as well, was to help out and to warm up, So, I've actually brought that right down into my own school now, where, from the students to go from red belt to black belt, it's actually, I make it a requirement. You have to assist at least once a week to come in, because I think by the time you get the black belt, you need to be comfortable. You need to be able to explain the rudiments of the technique to within your own grade. Because I think it was Einstein who said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it well enough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I've brought that philosophy right through. If you can explain it to somebody who's a lower grade than you, then you understand it.
Yeah.
If you can't explain it, you don't understand it well enough. Let's not talk about a grading yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's how I got teaching. There was no Taekwondo in Galway, so I started it, and then the following year I opened up the club in the university. There was also a technical college. So they're kind of rebranded Institutes of Technology now, because they've been improved. So the year after that, I opened up a third club in the IT, and by the time I graduated, there was literally 3 clubs flying it, and I went into work for a while, but I didn't really like it in a job. Taekwondo had always been there, so I just went. I went all in, and I said, I'm going full-time Taekwondo, and I did, and here we are.
Yeah. Fantastic. So were you teaching young kids, or was it mainly people your own age sort of thing, or a mixture? Or?
Great question. I wasn't comfortable with teaching children when I started, so I kept it to teens and adults.
Yeah.
And of course, college students, I could relate to them with the college clubs. Then when I went full-time, I knew I started teaching children. So that's when I opened it up. And I brought it into, I think I kept it to around 8. It took a while, from another few years, before I got comfortable getting younger and younger. More because it was more, I wanted to make it fun, but I also wanted to teach, and I didn't have the tools in my toolbox yet to relate to them. So eventually then I went and I did a kind of age 5 to 8-year-old class, and that was going well. And about, I think it's 4 years ago, I had come across Master Mark Hutton from Glasgow, and I invited him to come over to do a seminar. And when he was coming over, he made the visit to Ireland work for him. He taught a Cubs instructor's course in another part of Ireland. Now, I didn't know anything about Cubs, but he told me it was an instructor's course. So what I decided to do was travel down and do that course, and then bring him back to Galway with me. I didn't know what it was. I just knew if he's teaching Taekwondo, I'm going to be there. Well, it was a revelation. He had so many tools in the toolbox of the Cubs program for working with kids from age 3 and up. It filled in so many knowledge gaps for me, and the program itself was wonderful. So I actually adopted his Cubs program. I think it's probably 4 years we're going now, and it transformed my school actually in terms of teaching children. It's fantastic. And of course, I did what we do. I made my own. I used my own style of teaching to implement it, and it's been wonderful. So now I'm delighted to say that kids from age kind of 3.5 to 4 are doing really well. I'd be teaching between 80 and 100 of them a week. Yeah,
fantastic. So you obviously were teaching, quite experienced teacher at a young age, yet you didn't have that experience of the younger ones. And but I think it's important to be aware if that's the case, isn't it? Because then you have the opportunity to find the tools that you were looking for. And there's Master Hutton, who's supremely well versed in that area. He's got world-renowned feedback from his programs that we see, and I've seen them on TKDcoaching.com. There's an example of them there. I do know him personally as well, and what a fantastic role model for Taekwondo he is as too. So wow, so you've been doing that program, it's been a big success for you. And I know you teach right across from very early age up to the adults,
Yes, and I'm also a strength and conditioning coach. So I do a lot of one-to-one work as well with young athletes. And last year, maybe even the last 18 months, I've kind of branched into working with older adults as well. And I used the time last year to actually do a course online on actually teaching older adults. So we're talking like 70 and above now.
Right.
So fall prevention,
Wow.
increasing, you know, their muscle mass and bone density, basically, you know, helping to keep them active as long as possible. And
Yeah,
then there's
yeah.
a preventative aspect as well, because from the age of 40, we start losing muscle mass and even power quicker than anything else. And a lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize 40 is young, but
Yeah, yeah.
it does start at around age 40 unless you train it properly.
Yeah, yeah.
You
So
know,
these clients of yours, are they students of Taekwondo or
no,
no?
completely separate, completely separate. So it's a one-to-one basis, and everybody's different. So they could have elbow restrictions or shoulder restrictions or knee or hip or whatever. So I tailor their training directly for what their issues are.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Well, I think if you broaden, and one of the interviews I did with somebody from America, Tom Callis, he broadened the range of what self-defense was for me. Often we just believe it's just an altercation that you deal with another individual. Yeah, if you broaden it to what's life threatening or, you know, that kind of thing, then you look at, like you say, age, nutrition. This can be part of self-defense education as much as anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what you're obviously doing with these old elder clients, is that, you know, you're prolonging their lives, but and helping them to stay strong. And so do you find that rewarding? Is that a big thing for you?
Sorry, I just
Sorry.
the audio cut out. What was the question?
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that a rewarding thing?
Absolutely. One particular client, he came to me. He was referred actually by his wife. Actually, asked me would I take him, and he was extremely restricted, and he had basically, maybe not entirely, but basically he'd kind of given up on having, you know, a really active life anymore, because he was in pain. He was very restricted. He lost a lot of muscle mass. He was mid to late 60s, but we actually got a huge amount of his mobility back. And I'll
Yeah.
give you a perfect example. He would have struggled to lift a 20-kilo bag of coal. Now he can do a deadlift of 75 kilos
Wow.
for 6 repetitions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he has come so far. Last
Yeah.
year, it's unbelievable. It's like Clark Kent turning into Superman. You know, he's come so far.
Yeah.
And now he's sailing a boat again. And, you know, so for me, that's just, you know, that life transformation for him has given me a kind of a purpose as well, to kind of help him on that journey, and also to help others
Yeah.
on a similar journey.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. And it's amazing to hear these results that you're gaining from all this, which I guess come from your own training initially. You're only interested in strength and conditioning, educating yourself, and then you actually can reach out and help people that obviously the mainstream often misses, doesn't it?
Yes, that part of my journey all started purely from self-interest. I was really getting into the competing in the kind of latter half of the 90s, because now I was getting exposed to more international tournaments, and I just wanted to train as effectively as possible. Very few people heard of strength and conditioning outside professional sport back then, like rugby and so on. And the internet was just getting going at that point, you know.
Yeah.
So, but still, Amazon was around. I was able to find a couple of books, like the likes of Thomas Kurz, who became famous for his stretching books and videos. But he wrote a brilliant book called Science of Sports Training, which that became my Bible. I devoured it, and that exposed me. I used to read all the references at the back of the book, and that. What I would do then is I'd say, oh, that book sounds interesting, the one he quoted from. And then I would go and I would find ways of sourcing the books that he was referencing. And that led me to other books and stuff. So I became really interested in effective training back then. And then what happened was it brought me right through to my 30s. So I very, very rarely got a non-contact injury.
Right.
So it was because my body was always in good condition. I did good recovery methods. You know, they say there's no such thing as overtraining, you're under recovering. So I used to make sure my body, because we used to train hard. I mean, squat training on a Sunday was 4 or 5 hours long.
Right.
And then, and I'd still want to be back, training on Monday
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
could, So I had to learn what kind of training could I do day to day that always allowed me to recover and
yeah,
be able to continue and not be so sore for 3 or 4 days that I couldn't do anything, So there's an old motto that says, tomorrow's training session is the most important. Now that might sound strange because we're not thinking about the present moment, but what it means is don't do anything today to jeopardize tomorrow's training. That
sure.
could mean going out on the beer. It
Yeah,
could mean excessively training hard today that you end up not being able to train at all tomorrow. So
yeah, yeah,
tomorrow's training session is the most important. Don't jeopardize it by what you do today.
yeah, yeah,
I thought that was a really good philosophy.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%. If you like you say, if you're always considering what you want to do the next day, then you'll adjust what you do today, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. And these kind of things, I'm sure, resonate with the people that are listening and watching, and these things that they can take away with them, apply to their own training. So competing was a big deal. A veteran competitor of 12 years, well into your later 30s.
Yeah.
You said a lot of people would have had to retire for injury or just burnout or something like that.
That's what actually happened. It was that I was able to keep going right through to 38, and I just made a decision to retire. So there was 2 big tournaments that year. There was the WK Kickboxing World Championships in Orlando, and they had actually. So I went in for the light contact sparring, which was pretty much the equivalent of our continuous.
Yeah.
Not as hard as ITF Taekwondo. We hit a lot harder in Taekwondo than they allowed in the light contact in the kickboxing, and they had actually brought in ITF patterns in that year as well. Okay. There had been a Korean form section prior to that where it was ITF and WTF and any other Korean form, art forms. It was all kind of thrown in together, but they launched an ITF which was really well supported, which was great. So so I was pleased to get 2 gold medals at that World Championships that year. And there was, I'm just trying to remember, that was 2012. So I think we were 2010 was when I was in Korea. I'm pretty sure there was an ITF World Championships of some flavor in that year as well, because I know there was another big one. So I had decided to start to that year that I'm going to call it a year this year. Quit while I'm ahead and just focus on teaching. Plus, a friend of mine had been insisting that I write a book. He'd been nagging me for a couple of years, and he was like, look, he was actually my physical therapist at the time as well. Well, he still is. So he said, Shane, you're 36 now, you're 37 next year, you're still knocking the snot out of 18-year-olds. You need to write down what you've been doing the last 15 and 16 years that's kept you in optimum condition for this long. So it was never my idea, it was his idea. So he nagged me long enough that I went and I did it. So that last year I actually went and I wrote a book on optimal health for training. And I wanted to make it a one-stop shop for everybody. So I covered how to assess your mobility and your strength, so you kind of know where you are, so you can plan on where you want to go. And we covered all the different types of training from, aerobic to anaerobic, strength, mobility, power. I wanted to cover the mental aspect of training, because a lot of people put in all the physical training, but then they crumble when it comes to the competition to get stage fright. So we had to cover that. We all get beaten at some point. We need to learn how to deal with defeat and failure and how to overcome that and use it as a launch pad for success down the road. So I wanted to cover really everything: recovery, stretching, how to use foam rollers and all that. I was glad I did it, because what it did was it brought everything that I'd kind of learned, and it got me to focus in on what was really important.
And can people still buy that? Is that still available? Yes,
it's actually available on my website as a PDF now, shanefitzgibbon.ie.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah, I thoroughly encourage everyone to take a look at that, because obviously, speaking to Shane right here, right now, we can find out just the results from that kind of methodology that he's used throughout his competing, and just what it's enabled him to do. Fantastic. So you ended up being captain of Ireland as well,
Yes. So my Grandmaster Dalton was very, very proactive in the 90s and early noughties. and he got us hooked up with a lot of different international groups, which allowed us to enter some big competitions, which was fantastic. So we had a really strong team, which was originally from our own organization here in Ireland. But as we grew and we forged alliances with other organizations in Ireland, like when we joined ITF Canada under Che Jung-hwa, then we worked together to produce teams and the trials. So yeah, I was privileged to be the captain of that for a while. I wasn't the best fighter by any means, but I guess he saw leadership qualities in me that he thought would be useful in the team event. And harnessed that. So I was privileged to be on that team with some wonderful fighters that came out of Ireland. And that was good. We did a number of world championships. We also got to compete in some intercontinental championships. So there was we formed a European team with a number of top competitors from around the continent, like Tim Cool out of Netherlands, Richard Bell out of the UK. There was some fantastic fighters. So there was Europe against South Americas. There was a couple against Africa, and it gave lots of great travel opportunities as well. I was over in West Africa 3 or 4 times, which was fantastic.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I mean that is part of an international competitor. It's the travel, isn't it? Did you find that experience of traveling different cultures, different places, make a difference to you?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you, when you go to poorer countries, it's a good eye opener.
Yeah.
It's a really good eye opener, and like it's very easy, I think, when you grow up in a first world country to find excuses not to train. But when you go to a third world country and you see how much they train and how little they have to train with, it's a real eye opener. I mean, we brought over, secondhand and spare dough box with us and equipment, and they had very little over there, but it didn't stop them training. No way. It was incredible the level they used to get to, with how little resources they had. Yeah. And I think everybody should do that at some point, and ideally early in life. Go and, get to, when you're in college years, even get to some of those third world countries and see how they're living there. Go help out, experience it, and just realize that, there's a whole other world out there. We need to be exposed to.
Yeah, no, very much, and I mean, we've had to deal with the pandemic, haven't we? Which made us find things difficult, but in comparison, it's still nowhere near what you're talking about. So that was a great time for you, wasn't it? And then you've become a trainer of champions somewhat, haven't you? You've been able to turn that experience pass that on to your students. Yes.
I've been lucky enough to have had some really committed students now over the years, in fairness. So I'm delighted to see they did well at different tournaments. That's all for me. It was always a bonus. My personal enjoyment of the competition arena, I was always keen. I'd foster it in my students. I would encourage them to compete because of what they could learn from that part of the art. At the end of the day, it was always important to make a distinction between art and sport. But if they did enjoy it, then I'd help them as much as I could and give them the extra coaching. We used to do our own kind of local squad training at the weekends as well. That was kind of competition based. But so if they did well, fantastic. It was a bonus. But at the end of the day, it always had its place as well and perspective,
Yeah. So you look at it as a balanced approach to training.
Absolutely. I think people can easily. I probably did it myself when I was younger, and I tell a fib. I'm sure I did it when I was younger. We can get carried away with tournament success, and especially if you're a young person and you think you're all that. But the reality of it is that when it comes to real self-defense, it does not matter in the slightest how good you are in tournaments. It can help you deal a little bit with adrenaline in that. But there's a big difference between someone standing in front of you in a ring with rules and wearing gloves and somebody standing in front of you, and if you take your eye off them, they'll bottle you. Yeah. Totally world apart. Or, they're just waiting for 2 or 3 mates to jump in behind you. it's a totally different arena. So that's why I think perspective is really important when you have tournament success.
Yeah, very much. So you draw that comparison with the sport and the rules and the safety factor. Obviously, real life self-defense is no rules, no safety factors, and you've got to be aware of all of that. And that's got to be intrinsic in your training when you're in the dojo. How do you implement your philosophy of training as well? You know, if we think about Taekwondo, the foot, the hand, the fist, and the art of, if we bring that into the conversation, are you able to share any thoughts about that, about the do?
Absolutely. I think, what are the names of those Russian dolls? Is it Khrushchev or something like that?
I think I know the ones you're talking about.
Yeah, so you have a big doll, and then you have another doll inside. You have another doll inside of that, and yeah, I don't know what made that pop into my head just now, but I think with the Taekwondo, I think this might be a good way to look at it. If you think about the outer doll, the biggest doll as being the do, and everything else fits into it. Mm-hmm. But I think we make a mistake when we teach if we focus entirely on the physical training and we don't encapsulate the do. I think that wraps around everything and contains it. But of course, it doesn't. It not only contains it in a sense of giving it a structure, but it also, if you like, it protects everything else. So when, like, I was teaching my beginner samurais class there on Tuesday evening, and it explained to them that it does not matter how well you can kick and how well you can punch if at the first sign of adversity you just crumble. So we have to kind of build. This is like the reverse of the doll now, if you like, I know, but we have to build the spirit from the inside and out. So the spirit is a crucial part of our Taekwondo training, in my opinion. Yeah. And I didn't spend enough time in this in the early years. I didn't see the importance of it because I was still a young man. Yeah. So now I see the importance of building all my students from the inside and out. Yes, we have the physical training, but the mental training has to be a part of it, because Jeff Thompson wrote a number of books. I think he was professional doorman. He wrote all about self-defense, and he talks about the adrenal dump, and he was the real deal. If you can't conquer the emotional ordeal to do with conflict, the physical isn't even relevant now, because you're not going to be able to do anything. Your body will just let you down. And so that's why, it's important to realize that we have to build our spirit. We have to build that character, that courage. We have to experience being uncomfortable and panicky so we can learn how to deal with it. And that's why my students, they'll get in front of in each other's faces. We'll whack each other, not at the moment because of COVID restrictions, but in general training, I'm talking about, we'll be hitting each other, blocking each other, and getting bruises on the arms and the legs, because if they don't learn to deal with that and get involved with each other, then when it comes to a real scenario, you can't cope with it. Now, of course, we have to deal with the prevention, but a huge part of that prevention is the confidence of knowing, okay, first of all, I don't want to get involved in any scenario. I have to be aware, is this place risky? If this establishment looks dodgy, don't go there. Yeah. But if I go into this place, but if something kicks off, I don't need to get involved unless some poor soul is getting battered and I need to help out. But they have that inner confidence to know they've nothing to prove. But if they do have to protect themselves, they have the ability to do it. So there's multi-facets, I think, to teaching that, the art side of Taekwondo. You know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and you make a great point about obviously the emotional side. Like you say, you can have all the skills, you can be a top competitor, but when you're faced with a real life threat, unless you've addressed that, you probably won't know until it happens, and that's a bit risky, like you say, isn't it? Yeah. And there's ways to overcome that through training, and it's often interesting, isn't it? One aspect I've noticed recently, I've got some juniors doing the junior breaking boards, and it's a real life experience of failure when they don't do it, and it's interesting to see what happens to their emotions. It might even be the first time they try it, but already they're experiencing some form of failure, and it's how they deal with it. And then obviously the words that we can help them with, encouragement, and they break it, it's a big step forwards.
Yes, absolutely. I actually brought in a rule for my blue belts and above that they need to pass the destruction part of their grading. So all their patterns, could be all tickety-boo, looking great and so on. But if you ultimately cannot defeat the board. Now, passing the destruction doesn't always mean breaking the board, of course. Sometimes you get funky boards.
Yeah.
Sometimes a technique can be spot on. They can really go at it, but you can have a funky board. So, you know, as an examiner, I take all those different components into account.
Yeah, yeah.
But ultimately, I want to see that they're facing down the board, because the boards can give an emotional reaction to students, as you know yourself. They can do a lovely psychic against the kick shield, but then go to the board and it's like, oh no, you know. So yeah, I want them to say, right, you can face down that board. You have to deal with that emotional reaction to it. You have to go for it.
Yeah.
So I want to see a quality. I want to see an intent to break the board, not holding back emotionally. I want to see that the technique is good enough, and I want to see then that they really went for it.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
if they don't have those components in their techniques, they're not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Very much. And I've noticed in some of your training videos, you use the word fit for purpose, which is that something you use often?
It is. I actually borrowed it from Master Hutton that I mentioned earlier on. That certainly was his motto, fit for purpose. You know, and it applies to everything. It applies to life as well. Your whole body should be fit for a purpose just to participate in life, whether it's pushing a lawnmower, whether it's climbing a mountain, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, you should be fit for whatever your intended purpose is. So but like my kind of attitude is that there's no point in doing all the patterns if you don't understand that they're basically fighting movements. And coming back to the emotional side of it again, I learned this from Master Hutton. It's kind of clear he's somebody I actually quite look up to. He's always maintained that, and Grandmaster Cutler as well, who promoted me to 7th degree, is another person that I really look up to, because he's always been about your taekwondo being realistic.
Yeah.
But if you're facing in front of somebody and they have the intent to really hurt you, if you can't face them with the same intent to defend yourself, and if that means hurting them back and hurting them first, you're going to lose. You're losing because they have a different purpose than you.
Yeah.
And we have to be, and that takes emotional training, and that takes us going to an emotional place that a lot of us aren't comfortable going.
Yeah.
We have to get comfortable going there if you're going to have a chance in an altercation.
Yeah, 100%. And that takes us Taekwondo back to its roots in the field of the army, soldiers, warriors, in the field of battle. It's very much the thing you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I think we need to be careful that while tournaments have a lot to offer our students, we need to be careful to make sure our schools don't become overly tournament focused, that we lose sight of what Taekwondo was originally for. And I don't know, we teach a lot of kids, and for a lot of schools, the number of children training will outnumber the adults. And I think that's a shame, because Taekwondo has so much to offer adults.
Yeah.
But how we teach will largely dictate the mix of adults and kids in our schools. So we have to show adults that this is extreme. The Taekwondo is a lethal martial art if it's taught appropriately. But with the children, we can offer them, we don't need to let them know about, Alex Gillis's book, The Killing Art. They don't need to know about that side of it. What they do need to know is that Taekwondo can change your life. Instead of being the shy person who's new in class, who is standing against the wall, head down, praying that somebody will talk to you, that you can be the person who's out there mixing with the group, and you're the one that's going over to the shy person saying, hi, my name is Shane. Come on over, play with us.
Yeah.
And I actually scolded my students on Tuesday, because I had a new student in the class. And I called the existing kids and said, guys, why is nobody looking over there at that child who's just come in? They're on their own. Nobody's talking to them. And I said, get your butts in gear. Get over and say hello. Introduce yourselves. And that is what I want my kids, students learning. I want them to be able to walk tall, but they have to look for the children that they need to bring with them, and give them that little bit of confidence, you know?
Yeah, very much. And yeah, it reminds me of another conversation I had with somebody talking about out of the dojang into the world. You know, you take what you teach, you learn, and you apply it to your community and your way of life, you know, your work colleagues, your, like you're saying, learning how to be a friend in Taekwondo, teach you how to be a friend in school. Yeah, and we very much like to encourage that kind of thing. Whatever we learn in the dojang, we apply to our real life outside.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we often refer to, you know, there was the original Taekwondo book, which was referred to the Bible, then the encyclopedia came out. But I always keep this book handy, because for me, this is another Bible, and it's General Choi's moral guidebook. And if I could be so brazen as to just read the quotation that I've highlighted out of it here, because I think this is really, really important for us to remember. And it says, the only way one can truly achieve the status as a man or woman of Taekwondo is to go beyond the technical aspect and establish a lifestyle based on a solid code of morality. In fact, all the years of hard training will be nothing but a waste of time if not accompanied by modesty and propriety, which are the very essence of Oriental philosophy. And I think that is really good. And then he has loads of quotations in the book then from great philosophers like Lao Tzu, Sun Tzu, Confucius, and more. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And everybody should have a copy of that, in my opinion.
Thank you for highlighting that, because yeah, that's the kind of companion to the autobiographies that came out. I think obviously people were very interested in General Che, and may have put that one aside just because of just how it was. But like you said, it contains everything. And in the forward in that, which General Che says that he would have wished to have been able to explain these things more thoroughly, but he had to deal with the technical aspects of the taking Taekwondo around the world. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you for highlighting that. It's a great part. I totally fully endorse that. And yeah, it is how we grow as Taekwondoists ourselves, by embracing these things and learning more and gaining more insights for our own development. Fantastic. So really great to hear from your thoughts about this and your philosophy behind Taekwondo. I think people can relate to it straight away, and it's another resource for everyone watching and listening. And maybe nice to say something about ITFHQ, where we are.
Yes.
By the way,
sir, you can hear me okay, can you?
Yes, I can.
My Bluetooth microphone decided to die, so I've switched to the laptop mic. That's just to make sure it was working. Yes, ITFHQ. It's a wonderful group. My first membership now, my first 3-year membership with my schools actually comes to an end in September. So yeah, we will most certainly be renewing. And it's interesting because the COVID pandemic, as hard as it's been for most of us, it's actually yielded a lot of opportunities. And you might have heard the expression, no pressure, no diamond.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. And I think that the pressure that's been put on a lot of Taekwondo instructors in this last 15 months has actually brought out some diamonds. And you can kind of see the people that have, particularly in ITFHQ, who have seen a window of opportunity to develop personally, but also to help other people as well. And I would actually highlight yourself as well, because your seminar recently on mindfulness and meditation, I thought was wonderful. It's something that I practice myself, and I really enjoyed what you did with it.
Thank you.
And instructors like yourself and Sabam Catchment recently, and Master Manavaki and others, Grandmaster Sanders is wonderful. He's been very visible at a time when I think a lot of seniors have been invisible. And I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, but I have seen a disappearance social media of a number of senior instructors that I think should have used this opportunity to make their presence felt and to be a guiding light.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of ITEC HQ that we've seen a lot of guiding lights coming out. And yeah, I think it's, and you know, fair play. And you know, Master Crook has had a really tough time recently, you know, losing his daughter, but he's still, throughout the trauma of this, he's still endeavored to, you know, keep the wheel going. At TFHQ, you know, in Korea, and I think he deserves tremendous credit for that.
Yeah, 100%.
And all the senior instructors that, you know, the team around him. So
yeah, I'd echo that 100% with the, like you say, we were forced upon the pandemic, and we didn't know each other that well so much, but like you said, these things can galvanize us when we're all feeling the same way. And the restrictions limited what we could do, but there was this little outlet that could grow and build. And it's been in many ways a wonderful time to meet and connect with us all, and you know, reflect upon the Do, because that's the element that sets us up for these kind of adversities. It helps us to delve deeper within ourselves, and you know, we need experiences to develop ourselves, don't we? We don't always call upon them. They're not always wished, or they're not always the most pleasant, but they help us to grow as people. Fantastic, Master, talking to you. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel like I know you much better now, and definitely look forward to meeting you in person and working together on whatever comes our way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just while we're talking, I thought I've got a new little section. I've never done this before. It's a bit of fun. And I did hear you in an interview, you said fundamentals, the first part of fundamentals is fun, isn't it? So we must address the fun side of things, I guess.
Yes. I'm wondering what's coming now.
Well, favorite food? These are one unanswered questions.
Favorite food? Okay. My vegetarian girlfriend is going to love this answer. I'd have to say steak with sweet potato fries.
Yeah, I'm sure many people echo that. Yeah. Favorite music? I can see your guitar.
Favorite music? Okay, I will give you a double answer. U2 and Oasis.
Fantastic. Best book you've ever read?
Oh, do you know what? I think that has to be A New Earth. That was the most significant book anyway.
Eckhart Tolle.
A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
And I would recommend it really across the board to everybody. I think it's a life changer. Not everybody is ready to read it, but I think when you're ready to take it in, I think it's a life changer.
Fantastic. Yeah, Eckhart Tolle is the author of The Power of Now.
Yes, the same.
Which I'm sure people know anyway. Okay, person who's influenced you the most?
Person or persons have influenced me most? My parents.
Yeah.
My parents have been, they were my first mentors. They're still my mentors in the sense I ask them for advice still.
Teachers, is that right?
They're actually both teachers. Dad was a secondary teacher, mom was a music teacher.
Yeah.
They're both clued in, they're broad-minded, they're good to be able to give different aspects of a scenario. And you know, they were significant in my development years as a child, but still now I have a very good relationship with them, and so I would say they're still very influential in my life.
Wonderful. Favorite quote of many?
That's the problem. I have loads.
Today, favorite.
Okay, I'll actually here. I'll give you a quote. I can't remember who's from. Believing all books is the same as believing none.
I'll leave that with the audience there to ponder that one. Okay. Favorite pattern?
Ulji.
Okay.
Ulji. I don't know why. I just always loved performing it.
Was that one you competed with?
It was my favorite of the 4 degrees to compete with. It was actually.
Okay, sparring style, go forward or counter, or both?
In my early years, it was go forward. In fact, I don't think I had reverse gear in my early years, but I had such a good engine. I could go like a train and indefinitely, and I was very strong, aggressive fighter, and that suited my style. And then as I got older, so kind of into my 30s, it became much more balanced, and I used to conserve my energy a little bit better. And so I'd become a little bit more of a counterattack fighter, depending on who I was sparring. So it was much more balanced in my 30s.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. Board breaking or special technique?
For me personally, board breaking. That was my athleticism didn't go to special techniques.
Okay. And what, hand technique or foot technique or?
Hand technique with knife and strike.
Yeah.
In actual fact, and forgive me for patting the back, and I qualified this in the ITF Canada World Championships in South Korea in 2004. I was actually the only competitor to break the 5 boards with the knife and strike.
Wow.
In the team, this was in the teams.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased with that.
Yeah.
I discovered then and there I have a good knife and strike. And back kick. I've a good back kick. It was good for sparring and good for breaking as well. So
with a knife hand, was that static or stepping?
I stepped.
Yeah.
I stepped forward, and I did it as an outward strike, stepping forwards. Yeah. So, and if I really learned at that moment as well. It was instinctive up to that point, but then it became kind of intellectual knowledge, if you like, the importance of using everything, the core, the acceleration, everything. In that moment, it instinctively came together, and I realized, wow, this is what happens when you put it all together.
Yeah.
And I had to do it twice, by the way.
Oh.
Because what happened was I broke the boards, celebrated, ran over to the coach, big hug, and then they called me back and I had to do it again. Do you know why? They put up 4 boards by accident, and I was celebrating. I had to do it. So they said, right, you have to do it again. It was meant to be 5 boards. So I had to do it again, and I broke the 5 the second time then. I actually forgot that part of the story till just now. So there you go. That could have been a big, that's the importance of the psychology.
My mental focus. Yeah,
because it was done. I was celebrating, to be called back and have to do it again. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
No. I was said, right, no problem. 1 more board, we can do this. Yeah. So plow through it. Got a great photograph. Actually, it was actually Master CGO who took the photo, believe it or not.
Oh wow.
He actually got a cracking photo of that moment.
Fantastic.
Just to have to this day, which is nice to have.
Nice I'd love to see that. So if you have a copy, you can send it over to me at some point.
Yeah, sure. I'll find it somewhere.
Fantastic. Okay, sir, we've covered a lot of things. Thoroughly enjoyed our time together, and another fantastic interview that I'm sure many people will take a lot from and listen to more than once, because there's a lot of things in there to reflect upon and listen to and pick up on and apply to their own training. Thank you so much, Master.
Thank you for having me, sir. And if I could leave one nugget, it's that I've been blessed over the last number of years to have met people like yourself, like Grandmaster Cutler, like Master Hutton, Master Manavaki. There's actually a wealth of great instructors out there that we can all learn from each other. And I think it's important not to be too inward looking in our groups, that we need to look outward and see, who else we can learn from. I only got to train in the last 5 years with first Grandmaster Riki Ha, and wow. Especially the pioneers, they're not going to be around forever. Get learning from them, get some of their knowledge. It's just it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, very much. And I feel the exact same ways that you're speaking, and I'm speaking to people that work with first Grandmaster very closely. I spoke to Grandmaster Ray O'Neill. Hopefully going to catch up with Grandmaster Cutler. And yeah, the perspective they can give on those early days and the essence, and so close to the source of it, it's we have to kind of treasure that and cherish it and keep it
Yes.
for all the generations beyond.
Absolutely, yeah. Because if we're not tapping into the knowledge from the first and second generation, you know, the pioneers and grandmasters in the second generation, they were there, and we've got to try and get that knowledge if we're going to pass it on ourselves, and that's our responsibility as instructors, is to try and keep it as, yes, it's going to evolve, but that doesn't mean we can't keep the key components of purity.
Yeah.
You know? So,
Fantastic.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. All the best. Have a great day.
You too. Have a great day.
Yeah,
thank you, sir.
Be in touch soon. Thanks.